Unlocking hidden jobs, how executives can leverage. That's not it. I have this one. Will an executive recruiter find a job for me? That's one of my Forbes articles. Which we know the answer to that.
We're live.
We are live. Hey, Lauren, what's going on?
How are you?
I am doing amazing. I don't know where everyone else is going to be joining us from. I'm in Sisters, Oregon, where it is a little bit cloudy and winter is coming. That is what I keep saying. Winter is coming.
I'm in sunny South Florida. There's no hurricanes right now, and it's 90 degrees and very hot. So even though winter is coming, it does not feel like that here.
Yeah, we have fall colors, so be jealous.
I'm jealous of the fall colors. We don't get fall colors.
Yeah, I'll be jealous in probably a couple months when it's dreary, really dreary here, and we're up to here with snow. But anyway, so I'm super excited to be on here with you today. We are going to be talking about, both of us have recruitment experience and background. So we're bringing our recruiter lens to this LinkedIn Live, talking about kind of our insider scoop tips, and then also what we hear from hiring managers. And so that's kind of what's inside that hiring manager's mind, because we talk to them all the time.
Always. I feel like I talk to hiring managers almost more than I talk to candidates these days.
So one thing that, I think is interesting about this topic and talking about the two things at once is I've been in the position where sometimes people discount my role in the process. They see me as an administrative function that's sort of not very important. And I think that, we provide a lot of discernment and really important feedback in between candidates and the hiring managers. We're the conduit to the process. We're the one keeping things moving along. And sometimes when things aren't moving along, it's not because of us, it's because of things happening behind the scenes. So building that relationship with the recruiter that is working on the job is really important, don't you think?
It's so important to build those relationships. And really building the relationships is what's going to carry you forward in the future when you ever get in the position where you need a job again. So that's why those relationships are so important to not just build, but to maintain.
Absolutely. Well, I realized, because I am an activator and I jump right in, we didn't really introduce ourselves. So I'm going to start with you. You want to just give a highlights reel of, the tell me about yourself?
Sure. Lauren Sermon. I am a recruiter. I have my own recruiting agency, LWL Consulting. We do a lot of recruiting for a lot of different industries. In the beginning, it was just software. Now we touch everything from legal, healthcare, hospitality, like you name it, we kind of touch it. So we talk to a lot of different hiring managers in a lot of different industries. And I do a lot of business development. I sign a lot of new clients. So I'm constantly talking to companies about what's coming in the pipeline for 2025, what's the future looking like. And that's what I mean when I say talk to almost more hiring managers than candidates. Because I'm doing a lot of business development and really talking about the future and what's hiring going to look like next year.
Absolutely. Well, any good business owner would be doing that in your shoes, and that means that you have a window into like what people are actually saying. And we know that our recruitment cycles are oftentimes cyclical. Like sometimes we have slower times, dry spells, and then it picks back up and we get slammed. And sometimes it's just based on the economy. Sometimes it's based on budgets, like when a department gets flushed with their budget. And then during those tough times, sometimes they don't have the budget. So we have to keep tapping into that just so that we understand what we're even planning for and what we're going to market for.
100%. But getting into recruiting really changed my life. I love it. I was a hiring manager before I got into recruiting. So I worked with recruiters on the other side as a hiring manager, hired hundreds of people for multiple studios in Florida when I was running a sales team and operations. So when I say I've interviewed literally thousands of people, I have and hired a good bit. So excited to talk about this today with you, Gina. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. I almost forgot. I'm Gina Riley. I have my own company called Gina Riley Consulting, and my primary focus is leaders and executives who are planning a career transition, or they're experiencing one now because they got laid off, or they're having a long period of unemployment. I use a model that I created unique to me. It's called Career Velocity. And next probably summer, I'll be releasing a book under not the title, probably Career Velocity, because I've been working on my title, Lauren, that explains not just the 9-step model, but literally how to go to the micro to develop your unique value proposition, how to talk with recruiters and hiring managers, how to hone your message, how to interview prep, all of those things, and then a thought leadership strategy. So I've been a student of career transitions for, 5 to 7 years, but my background is actually 10 years in corporate America. I worked at Intel. I was an HR business partner. I managed a 500-person intern program. I made 500 offers, Lauren, in 1 year. I also have worked for Talents Group Executive Search. I'm affiliated with them. I've done some executive search, CEO, COO, CFOs. I've been in the boardroom talking with board members and discussing candidates that are coming through the pipeline. I've watched finalists do their presentations and win and lose the job right there before my eyes. So that's kind of the expertise that I'm bringing today, is some recruitment background, but also developing a career transition program that helps people get from one point to another.
That's awesome. It's so important.
Exactly. So you brought something, you had like a show and tell today. And
Yes.
so do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think it's important to always talk about things that are working and working well. I think a lot of times people attend a live or something like this, and we talk about all the things that don't work, and people are like, okay, but what should I do?
Right.
So I want to talk about some things that worked recently, and I can't name names because somebody's still in an interview process and it's very confidential, but I had a hiring manager post a role in my feed that I am friends with. I do not recruit for this person. We are just friends. Okay. But they posted that they were hiring for a role. And a few days before, I had a candidate reach out to me that was looking for a job. Now, I've placed her before, so I've worked with her before. I know she's wonderful. She was wonderful in her last role. She literally, she was a victim of layoffs. Layoffs happen to everyone, y'all, even the most successful person. It's a boardroom and a budget, and it's got nothing to do with you. If you're laid off, it's not nothing to do with your self-worth. So please hear me say that. But she was laid off, and she'd reached out to me, and I saw him post this role, and I knew she's phenomenal, and I know he's a wonderful leader. And immediately in my head, I reached out to him and I said, you need to have a conversation with her. She's your person, and I want to introduce you. And he said, okay, perfect. Introduce us. And the intro is important, but I want to explain to you right now that the follow-up from the candidate is more important. So that's what I want to read to you. I want to read this to you today. It's what she wrote in the introduction. I'm going to redact some of it so you don't get all the information, but I want to read this to you because this worked. She's now on her almost third final interview, moving through the process, done very well. This is a fully remote job. Y'all, this is the one everybody wants, right? So, okay. So I sent the introduction. As mentioned, I want to connect you to, I'm going to call her Gina so that I don't mess it up. I want to connect you to Gina. Gina is incredible, and I think you'd love to have a conversation with her. Gina, can you drop a quick intro here along with your resume? Hope you both have an awesome weekend. That was all I did, okay? So Gina follows up. Hello. It's nice to virtually meet you. I reached out to Lauren as my company did major layoffs where my entire team was laid off due to budget cuts. Y'all, she calls it out right away, okay? She's calling out the fact that she was laid off, and she's getting it out in the open, because a lot of times people immediately want to know, why did you leave your last job and why are you looking for work? It's the number one thing recruiters and hiring managers want to know. You see that above our head? What they want to know? They want to know why you're looking for work. So she immediately calls out that she was laid off. She says, despite this unfortunate event, I am still very much motivated and excited about what my future holds. I am looking to become part of a scrappy and innovative team. I'm passionate about being more than just a number, and I'm prepared to bring new ideas to the table to make a difference beyond sales metrics. Most importantly, I'm enthusiastic about continuous learning, and I'm pursuing my master's in the science of business leadership. Y'all, it goes on where she starts talking about why this company is intriguing. Her experience. I have experience working with countless Fortune 500 companies and enterprise brands. I have a large and powerful network I want to share with your team. She literally lays it out exactly of all the reasons why he should take this call with her. And then wraps it up and says, I'm looking forward to exploring the synergies and learning more about you and this opportunity.
I am so blown. You've just literally knocked my socks off. I'm going to go back and listen to this live and listen to you tell that story again. If anybody is listening today, that was like a master class in communication.
She did it all. She was incredible. And I knew from working with her in the past, most people, I'm like, listen, if I intro you, can you send me what you're going to send first so I can make sure it looks good? Like, don't just emails like, can I have 15 minutes of your time? I normally check people. I'm so nervous, but she was so good. Gina was so good. I knew she was going to send the best intro and it was going to be incredible. And I didn't even have to worry about it. And she knocked it out of the park. Granson.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. I think that's going to help a lot of people, actually. And I felt very inspired by it. But you're bringing up a really good point. Communication. Good morning, Jen. Welcome
Yay.
to the party. We are talking about great communication.
Do they need me? I don't know.
We always need you, Jen.
Absolutely. So Jen Sethry has just joined us. Jen, do you want to do like a 30-second tell me about yourself since you just joined us?
Yeah, Jennifer Sethry, founder, CEO of Intry, technology platform, gets resumes through ATS. We're doing this awesome, career accelerator program. And we're here to help people figure out how to career transition, get jobs, and fill up your tool basket. That's it. Done.
Oh my gosh, let's bottle that up. That was
Short
perfect. That was perfection. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we're talking about really great communication. Lauren just read the most incredible introduction that one of her candidates did to a hiring manager that was compelling and full of facts and data, but full of things that were actually inspiring and would make me want to talk with them. It was incredible. But it made me also think about, some of the things that my candidates have done to get people's attention. And one of my favorite stories is something that's so subtle, and it's not as big of a story as Lauren just told. But I had an executive level global sales leader who was applying for a position at another global company, and he had the inside scoop. Hey, we've got an opening. So he got right into the interview process. And unfortunately, when it came down to it, 4 months in, they chose an internal candidate. So, right. And internal candidates are difficult to beat. And so what we did was we just kept going. He kept doing his job search strategy and the whole thing. And about 4 months later, guess what happened? That internal candidate that got promoted that they were so afraid of losing left the company. So let's talk about communication here. So my client was like, what do I do? What should I say? Should I start selling myself? I'm like, no, they're already sold on you. You were the number one external candidate. So we did a different play instead. The text to the senior VP, the hiring manager, who he had a direct line to now, said, hey, I hear you're in a tough spot. Let me know how I can help. That was it. 2 weeks later, job offer, and he was on his way to the next job. So my point in telling this story is think about what the hiring manager might be feeling or thinking as they go through their interview process. They need a problem to get solved. In this case, this VP going into a rough holiday season with their company was going to need somebody very capable to step into this role fast. So that's one of my favorite stories. Lauren?
I just love how it really proves that you have to maintain these relationships and you can't burn bridges no matter where you end up in the job process. I talked to somebody recently who was interviewing for a role. It didn't work out. And she sent a very nice, thank you for the time and a wonderful follow-up. And I talked to some candidates and recruiters never call me back. We will call you back if something comes up and you are wonderful. We will. It does happen. I promise. She got a call back the next week from that woman. She said, I don't have an opening on my team anymore, but I really enjoyed talking to you. This role is adjacent. It's not what you've done before, but if you're interested, the pay is similar and I can get you an interview on that team. And she didn't end up getting the job, but she still got another interview with the same company. And now she's still on their radar. That just didn't end up being the right path for her, but that's okay. She got to meet more people at the company. She got to keep networking. She's still going to be top of mind, and they'll probably refer her to their friends at other companies.
You know, I heard a statistic recently, something like 33% of all hiring managers know within the first 90 seconds of if they would hire that candidate or not, right? And I think, you know, what you guys said is exactly right. It all comes down to communication. You know, like, I don't know, I heard someone say communication is like a dance, right? It's the rhythm, the coordination, the ability to lead and to follow. And I think for a lot of people, your inclination is to lead, and sometimes the inclination really should be to sit back and listen, because it's like an open book test, right? Oftentimes they will give you the answers to the test if you're not trying to take up all the oxygen in the room.
I love that. My number one rule is lead with curiosity in all these conversations.
Right.
So you're talking to someone like Lauren, who's recruiting for this job, and she's got the direct ear of the hiring manager. What does Lauren need to know from me right now that helps me move along in the process? And it might not be telling your entire life story. It might be one or two very specific things that has her say, I'm on the right person today.
Right.
Great. And go there.
And recruiters and hiring managers need to hear different things as well. Just like Gina said, I recruit for some healthcare roles. And when I speak to doctors, I need to qualify certain things that you've done in your past, but I don't need to hear your whole life story. It's a very, like, I'm checking boxes to make sure you fit a profile. And then I'm going to pass you on to the person who wants to hear your life story. If I pass you on, that's great. So please answer the questions I'm asking so that I can pass you on. That's the other thing that sometimes happens to me. I have a very limited time to talk to people, and they get so involved in what they want to tell me, they don't allow me to ask the questions I need to ask so that I can move them forward.
You know, and actually, so Lauren, I think that's really interesting, because that really also ties back into your brand, your UVP, and your narrative. And I think, you know, what I've seen lately from a lot of candidates that we've worked with is they're so excited that they finally have someone to tell their story to, because the interviews have been few and far between, right? And so I think, you know, it's important to practice. It's important to role play, and you know, to use, you know, a coach or an interviewing tool, or even just take a video of yourself telling your story. You know, like, is it compelling? And I know people laugh at me when I suggest that, but I was like, you know, you need to be able to concise, right? What, in 90 seconds, you've got, you know, you should be able to tell your version of your narrative in 30 to 45 seconds, right? I mean, commercials are 30 seconds. A commercial tells you their mission, their value, what they're selling, and what they need from you. It's not an unreasonable amount of time to be able to tell your story.
You're bringing up a really good point. One thing that we worked diligently on in the boot camp, and we do it first because, you know, we believe that knowing yourself from the inside out and what you're able to offer before you put yourself out there is really important. So we work on what we call the UVP, the unique value proposition. And it's really coming forward with that tell me about yourself narrative, which can take a little bit longer. But when you're talking to someone like Lauren on that first call, it's okay to give the career through line. What are you most known for? What are the things that you're most known to deliver? How did you get here? But without going, I was born in, you know, this town in Missouri. You don't want to do all of that, but you do want to bring forward the top things that you're known for. What is your career through line, and what are you most uniquely situated to do right now?
Yeah. I am laughing because I did that the other day. I did. And I was just like, Lindsay, who's not on here, she was like, Jen, we needed the short version. And I was like, oh. And it's so funny because I talk about it all the time, just giving your helicopter pitch. And then I was like, oh my God, I just did the thing I tell people never to do. That's I mean, so even when you know it and you talk about it and you practice and you coach it, it's like a muscle, the more you do it, the better you get, which again is why I suggest that, videotaping yourself or doing practice interviews is you get better and better. I mean, like Lauren, how many people do you need to talk to in a day? Like you probably are like, I got 15 minutes, let's go. Right. And it's,
Normally it's back-to-back calls and I have a hard stop.
Right. I have some recruiter friends and they will only do it in 7 minutes. And if you can't spit it out in 7 minutes, then it's like because listen, like, let's be real, like hiring managers, their teams are getting smaller, 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 smaller. Recruiting teams in companies are getting smaller, 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 smaller. Right. So you got to have the right resume. You got to have the right UVP. You got to have the right message and know your audience. I had someone who we talked to the other day and she was like, I've had like 3 interviews and I think I'm killing it and no offers. And I was like, okay, so I don't want to be mean, but the only common denominator here is you. So like, think back, what is it that you're doing or what is it that you're saying that isn't moving them forward? Because if it didn't work the first time and it didn't work the second time and you're still saying the same thing the third time, why? Is it like, did it happen in the team interview? Did it happen, and they got further down the line. And so as we were sort of talking about it, I thought, well, maybe it's because maybe in the teams you did too much talking and maybe you didn't do enough listening. Like, I'm like, take me through, what happened. And I'm not you guys, right? But I was like, wow, 3 times. That's kind of a lot.
Well, if I can jump in, I think that sometimes candidates have a misfire because they're not able to quickly discuss their relevancy to that hiring team. And because I do interview skills training with Talents Group, I go into corporate and I train corporate employees or company employees how to craft effective questions, how to listen and probe, how to be aware of biases, and how to select talent. And what we tell the interviewers is it's 80-20 rule. They should only be talking 20% of the time. They should be asking skill-based questions to get the answers so they can start to evaluate whether or not this person has the skills, behavioral, technical, functional, to do the job. And so what I would ask that particular person to do is think about, is the airtime that you got, were you able to give your relevant skills and stories that would land with that audience and make them feel compelled to move you forward? That's what I would say.
So I just want to ask both of you guys a question, Gina, based on something that you just said. So again, I'm very into statistics lately. And one of the things that, because, listen, the market is changing, right? Like it's, what was working a year ago is, I think, different to now. And one of the things that I've noticed a trend in is, and I think, Lauren, you'll have expertise in this too, is something like 60% of employers are using, what is it called? Behavioral interviewing techniques.
Yeah,
right?
That's what I train with. Yeah.
And so like, behavioral interviews are like, you're looking at a movie trailer of your professional life, right? Like they want to give a glimpse into how you perform in future scenarios. And the person that I was just talking about, I was like, I wonder if in this process, they were using the behavioral techniques in some of the group interviewing sessions and they didn't like how the performance was or how they would integrate maybe with some of the other people on the team. And I don't think we've talked a lot about that on these lives, or sort of, the behavioral interview questions, because I think, it's kind of like when we talked last time, the hard skills and the soft skills and how those connect. Because I think it's becoming more. I mean, thoughts?
Oh, I have thoughts for days, and I don't want to railroad over time with Lauren because she's genius, wonderful, amazing. I will just say this. I could talk about this for 6 hours because I do 6-hour training on exactly behavioral interviewing. Back at Intel years ago, those of us in talent acquisition were trained to teach others behavioral interviewing. It was designed by Dr. Paul Green back in the late 80s, I believe. And the idea behind it is past performance is the best predictor of future behavior. You're 80% more likely to get it right and select the right talent if you get stories in the past that give you some window into what people then could do for you. If you're being asked questions like this, what would you do if you were found in this particular situation? That's not a behavioral question. That is asking you to make suppositions about what you would do. That doesn't mean you've done it. So when we're training people to ask these questions effectively, we are literally trying to dig and hear from the past. What was your process? Walk me through it. Step by step, how did you handle that situation? What were the obstacles? How did you overcome it? And did you stick the landing with some kind of a result? Or it may have been a failure, and that's totally cool. Then we get to hear stories about humility and learning. So behavioral interviewing, when it's done right, is very effective. When it's in the hands of people who are not skilled and don't know how to use it, this is what it looks like. Tell me about a time when you failed. That is not skill-based interviewing. It's giving context around that before you ask a question like that. Hey, in our business, there are things that we have stumbling blocks all the time because of the nature of our business. Tell me a little bit about a time that you were really working on some project and it went sideways. Tell me about that.
So Lauren, and everything that Gina just said, how do you coach people for that? Because I think it's not necessarily innate. So when you're sending somebody in, what do you do?
It's definitely not innate. Again, I know Gina, you coach on this. You could probably answer better than I can. But when I'm working with candidates, I mean, it's really on being able to complete the entire thought process of what you did in the past. And a lot of people can start this story of, I did this or I experienced this and this is what happened, but they can't get to the end result and what happened because of their part in this story they're telling. So I work with candidates on, these are the potential questions you could be asked. Let's work on 4 or 5 stories that work in general for a few of these that could go either way. And we really work on, you need to make sure you say these 6 key factors in this order so that the interviewer understands that you know your whole thought process and how you affected the team, your overall result. We work through literal check boxes and we have stories prepared. So when I work with candidates, we have 4 or 5 stories that they tell in every interview. It doesn't matter what company, those are their stories that work for those questions regardless. And I think Gina would probably tell you something similar.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like, you want to prepare your stories in advance, right? That sort of highlight your problem solving skills, maybe quantifiable achievements. And then maybe even what you just said, practicing adapting your experiences to the different potential questions that might be asked.
Yeah,
right.
I think it's important to be able to think about your questions that you're going to get in an interview process, especially if they're behavioral questions. They will be similar regardless of the company that they're coming from. So if you can really understand your story and what you did and how you made an impact and learn to tell 3 or 4 good stories, just like you're going to learn your UVP, you're going to learn how to do that in 90 seconds. These are other little small narratives that you're going to learn how to tell. And once you perfect that, you will feel so much more confident when you walk in the interview.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone has any questions, post them in the comment section, because we would be happy to talk about that. So we were talking earlier, I think you guys, about making a memorable impression on people, right? And there's a myriad of different ways to do that. It's your resume, it's your LinkedIn profile. And again, I'm going to go with another statistic. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I love stats. I think that helps foster our conversation.
Well, I mean, so I'm not going to say who. I'm just going to say Kaylin, who I think you guys both know, who I think is just an awesome human. And she said something like 85% of hiring managers say an employee's brand, right, influences their hiring decisions. And And I think that is, when there's still, I talk to people every day who are like, do I really need a brand? I'm like, whether you want to or not, like, digital media is here, and LinkedIn is your digital media platform for getting a job and putting your best foot forward. So yes, you are your own brand. And if you don't take it seriously, you need to, like, how does your banner look? Don't just have, like, wildflowers in your banner. It's a beautiful picture, but what does it say about you? Because that's part of the 7 seconds that you're getting evaluated when someone goes to your profile. It's great, but it's not Facebook. It's not Instagram. It's not Twitter. It's a job platform. It's a networking platform, right? So, I mean, like, Lauren, when you go and you are looking for people that you want to reach out to, like, how much time do you spend looking at someone's banner? And what are, in your mind, the do's and don'ts of that?
I mean, I definitely take notice of it. I wouldn't necessarily say I would be completely turned off if your banner was horrible, right? I'm not going to completely judge you by your banner, but I will say people notice what you put effort into. And if you're someone who I get to your page and you haven't done anything with your banner, it's like the normal old LinkedIn thing, or it's something that like you said, it's like a picture of something from your hometown. Like, cool, that's awesome. And I'm so excited for you. But on LinkedIn, that's valuable space. And just like a resume, you're trying to buy time to get people to keep looking. The banner is the very top of your LinkedIn. And if you think about the psychology behind that, that's what's going to get people to go down and keep looking at your experience. So you have to utilize that, or you're really wasting something really valuable that LinkedIn's giving you. They don't charge you extra to change your banner. You don't have to have something templated from them. You can do anything you want. And it's really a space that you can showcase yourself if you do it well. And I know we work on that in the bootcamp as well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think of it like your banner and your LinkedIn is like a fingerprint. It should be unique because it's uniquely you.
And it can change too. Doesn't have to stay the same forever.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I mean, it's anyway, all right. I had another question, but I feel like I'm asking a lot of questions right now.
Not at all.
So on the topic of, getting in the hiring managers' minds, what else would you say, Lauren, about, what you hear most from hiring managers? What are they saying they wish they could see and hear?
I mean, I think one thing I want to say, and job seekers, hear me out when I say this. I know you're exhausted and the job search process is exhausting. And I talk to a lot of hiring managers who are exhausted. A lot of them are just like recruiters, are doing more with less. They have smaller teams, smaller budgets. And it's just not as easy of a time right now. I think everybody who's watching knows that. But hiring managers, in my opinion, it's not so much that they're looking for a unicorn. They're looking for somebody who puts forth a little extra effort. And it sounds crazy to me, but sometimes I talk to hiring managers and the bar feels so low, so low. Especially like I recruit for some sales roles, right? Sales is reaching out to people and getting in front of people. And if I'm recruiting for a sales role and you comment on my post that you're interested, one word, but you never apply, you never email, you never reach out, what are you doing? How are you showing me that you would be good at sales? So I think that, like, literally just a little tiny bit of effort. And then the other thing I'm talking to hiring managers about right now a lot is that people are using AI so exclusively to help in the process that they're not checking themselves. And then multiple people are turning in things that look almost the same. So that's what's getting you caught. It's the other people who are using AI the same way as you, and nobody's really double checking or making it actually personalized. And hiring managers are exhausted. They're getting 6 or 7 different cover letters or resumes that look like the exact same thing because you all use ChatGPT to write it in the same way. And I see hiring managers even posting about this on LinkedIn lately. Like, our company stopped doing this 6 months ago, but ChatGPT doesn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a gotcha, right? I mean, I think it's, you guys should be using Intry. I'm just saying, it's so much better. One thing I wanted to just circle back to what we were saying is that come prepared for the interview. I can't tell you how many people that I've interviewed for jobs don't come prepared. And I'm like, why are you wasting my time? Right? You literally, you don't know what the mission is. You don't know what it is that we do, and, I've run company with 10,000 people and I've run company with 5 people, right? But still come prepared. Know what it is that we do, maybe understand our values, understand the culture, right? And like if I start asking you questions or the team starts asking you questions, we're going to assume you've done a little research, right? It's an interview. It takes a lot to get an interview these days. So not coming prepared, man, like I'm out. Like that's going to be the shortest interview in the history of the universe.
Bringing up a really good point about doing your research, and there's definitely methods that work better than others. I personally advocate for starting with the company webpage and looking at mission, vision, values, but take it a step further. How do you align what your past success stories and how will your values and behaviors show up in the storytelling so that they can hear that you will integrate well into that culture? And we're not talking about being a copy exactly cookie cutter of all the people that work there.
Right,
we're talking about a values match, because if we don't have a values match, it won't go well.
Right. And I think it's like, trying to take a square peg into a round hole. We did get a question though. So someone would just asked us, do we have any specific tips for military service members separating from the military and moving into the industry? I can answer that from like a resume perspective, right? Because like an MOS is really different than a civilian resume, right? And the different branches of the military have different terminology, right? So I would encourage you to, use a platform, like Intry to make sure that you're translating your military terms into civilian terms, that you would understand, like, supply chain has different, it's a different vernacular, right? And I think a lot of people who are transitioning from the military don't speak civilian terms, right? And a lot of times the job description in your resume won't match. And that is, I think, a number one thing that you can do to help yourself. And also, like, if you have served, thank you for serving. We really appreciate it. The one person I talked to maybe a month ago that was coming out of the military back into civilian life, they're like, well, my skills aren't transferable. And I was like, well, tell me what they are. And I was like, good God, man, they are absolutely transferable. Like what you did was seriously badass. Ooh, I promise not to swear. Oh, sorry about that, peoples. Sorry, not sorry. And so, I think it's important to your skills transfer. You just have to find the right words to articulate what it is that you did in civilian terms. And it wouldn't hurt to get a coach. You can, any one of the people who are on the event, reach out to, recruiters and ask for their advice. I mean, like Lauren all the time supposed, hey, like schedule time with me. And some people do, some people don't. Like, why would you not take advantage of that? Right? I mean, what else do you guys have to say to that point or that question?
I think just how you said, you have to find the right words for your resume. You have to understand how your stories translate to the corporate world as well, especially the new field you're trying to transition into. Also, thank you for your service. If you're watching, it's very hard to transition when you're first getting into that mode in your head. It's very hard because I've had a lot of family members who are in the military, and that's really part of it's you. It's your identity. So transitioning into the corporate world is already something that's weird and it's new and it's kind of scary. And really understanding not just the resume and the verbiage on the resume, but understanding how your stories relate to a corporate setting, how you tell those stories the right way, just really being polished and understanding that your story will be different than what other people are telling. And it's probably going to be more compelling and more valuable, but you have to tell it the right way. And coach, like Jen said, you probably do need a coach to help you transition through that. I mean, it's not an easy thing.
And ATSs don't understand military speak. And that's why you really have to do the translation. There is a really great job website, though. Oh, God, it's not coming to me right now. I think it's like USA Jobs. And they do really focus on people who have been in the military and are transitioning into civilian life. I can't remember if that's the job site, but you can, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll try to do some research and figure out which one that is. But another really good place to check is your local Goodwill. Goodwills work with a lot of people that are transitioning out of the military into civilian life. I know people don't know that, but it's awesome. It's a really, really great resource. And every Goodwill is a little bit different. But one of the things I wanted to ask you guys about is, when candidates are applying for a job or they're interviewing with you, Lauren, sending a thank you note, I think has gone the way of the dodo bird, right? Sending a text thank you is not like sending a thank you note. You don't need to, send it via, US Postal Service, but a thank you note. I mean, if you do, I think that elevates you to an entirely different level. Honestly, I think people are super impressed by that. But why do you think people aren't sending thank you notes? And you guys, everyone who is here, send a thank you note. It's really important. But Lauren, what do you say about that?
Yeah, I think thank you notes go so far. So far. If you are my candidate and you're working with me and you don't send a thank you note, I will never work with you again. I'll just tell you that right now, because I think that's how important they are. As a recruiter, I don't get many thank you notes, just being honest. After an initial phone call, if I reach out and I tell you hey, I'm so sorry you didn't get that role, whatever, I get thank yous for that, for not ghosting people, right? Oh, thank you for letting me know. I do get those. But after an initial conversation, nobody ever really messages a recruiter. It's oh, it's so nice to talk to you. Don't get me wrong. The few of you who might watch this and you did send me a thank you note. I'm not generalizing everyone, but for the most part, it's something that's just overlooked, and people are so burnt out and moving through the process. I will say something that's interesting that's happened to me lately, and Gina, I'd like to hear from you on this as well. But when I get on an interview with someone, and Jen, you talked earlier about coming to interview prepared, right? I won't be here if you're not prepared.
Yeah.
People look at recruiters well, you're just a recruiter. Just the recruiter decides if you go to the hiring manager. Just the recruiter is still somebody you have to have a good first impression with. Okay. So I get on a call with someone and they're just they are, I'm just going to say they were rude. They were rude. Halfway through the call, I think they realized that the job I had was actually a job they really wanted, and the attitude switched, but they'd already been rude. That person sent me a thank you for talking to me note. That person followed up with a thank you because they knew they put their foot in their mouth. So it's interesting to me to see that it's almost the people who realize they messed up are more quick to come back and say, oh, thank you so much for your time today. Da, da, da. But the people who kind of just move through the process and they're burnout in the job search process, I get it, y'all. I get it. Have a little templated message and just change 1 or 2 sentences and send it. But have something.
Yeah.
Have something.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the, when people don't send a thank you note, right? Or even address it, my rule of thumb is if I interview someone and I don't get a thank you in 24 hours, and there's a lot of candidates applying for that job, I'm you just self-selected out. Because that attention to detail matters to me. And if you just are thanks to the interview, done. Okay, I'm still going to give you a point, but if you don't reiterate the key points and the interest from the thank you note, I'm kind of but hands and above, the person who sends me a personal thank you note, in the mail, I'm oh, or they do both. I'm you're definitely making it through, provided the hard skills, all that, right? I'm that's a really big thing. And we talked about this, I think, on our last one that Lauren, you and I were on. It's you don't want to wait till now to start nurturing. You can reach out to hiring managers before they have a job opening. You can reach out to recruiters before they have a job opening. You're planting the seeds, you're gardening, nurture those relationships. This is my opinion. What say you guys?
On the thank you note topic, I think it's an important way to be remembered and stand out. It doesn't mean that you're going to get selected, but it's a good way to keep the conversation going. And if I was a candidate going through a process, I would be taking notes about what I'm hearing and listening to, so I could infuse one or two comments about what I learned into that thank you note. And now it's not generic, right? So that's what I would do. And I put in the chat, it's good job search hygiene to do that. And it's also a way to feel like you are in more control of your communication. Because if Lauren's got a job, I've talked to her and I send a thank you note, within a day or so, thanking her for her time, expressing my interest in the role. And someone like Lauren responds back. Not all recruiters have time or will respond back. But being in control of my own communication, may feel empowered that in 2 weeks' time I could check back. Hey,
Yeah.
just following up. And because I didn't ghost, I didn't go away from the interview and just go off into the oblivion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and if a recruiter responds to you and you're not interested in the job, don't not respond. Just be like, hey, I really appreciate you reaching out. I'm not in the market at this time, but let's keep in touch. Right. Because then you're going to go and they're like, this person had enough respect to do this. One question that I saw that came in earlier when we did a live that we didn't get to, that I think it would be helpful to do, is what are questions that people should prepare for? So like my top 5 are, they're always going to ask, tell me about yourself, right? They're always going to be like, why do you want to work here? Because why do you want to work there, right? But like, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? I mean, I hate that question, but it's going to get asked, especially in a first round, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, depending on what the role is, right? Why should we hire you? I mean, I think those are like, and then if you haven't done your homework, right, and you don't know anything about the company, like, well, that's kind of an immediate demerit. What other questions do you think people should prepare for?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have?
We have 14 minutes.
Yeah. So I have an entire chapter in the book I'm writing dedicated to the minutia of the things that I think people should be doing research on, especially at the executive levels, to prepare for an interview. And to prepare for an interview, if you're really part of that mix, it can take up to 40 hours of your time. And that's just getting to the finals. And then there may be another, set of crunch hours that you must do. Looking at the company, but then beyond that, look at what's in the news. Look up the key players and the stakeholders. Look at their background. See what the connector points are. Evaluate the competition and start to formulate your own hypothesis about why the job is open. Why do they need someone with your toolkit? Then reverse engineer all the bullet points on that job description into behavioral questions. All you have to do is kind of tell me about a time when you developed a strategy and led a team and whatever. That's all you got to do. And then you start building your source stories from there. So those are the questions that I want my executives to be prepared to do, is to talk about why they need me to do that job, because I can answer all the things in that bullet list.
Lauren, how about you? What do you think?
I think really making sure you're prepared for the behavioral interview questions is super important. I think that you can also have all of the questions prepared in your mind that you think you're going to walk into, but you have to know that something's going to throw you off in your interview. And I think learning to be comfortable when you're uncomfortable is important. And being able to, I tell people, like, you got to learn to be a duck. Like, things can be crazy under the water and your feet can be flapping like this and going nuts and insane, but on top, like, you better just be smooth
Like,
in the water. Like, you cannot let that out. So I literally tell my candidates, I'm like, what is the one thing that somebody could ask you that would totally throw you off? Like, and sometimes people aren't trained well, right? Like, Gina and I talked about this privately, but sometimes an interviewer will ask you a question that's illegal. What do you do if it happens, right? If you're thrown off, if something like that happens, and now you're in this moment. And the other thing, and I'd love for Gina to give some advice on this, but if that happens and you want to not answer a question, Gina, how do you coach people on that?
I have a tendency to, you know, when they go low, when they go low, I go high. I would take the high ground and not get super defensive about it. I would be about deflecting in a gentle way. What I would not do is, you can't ask me if I have children, you know. I wouldn't do that. I would steer it back to, you know, regardless of my family situation, I'm the type of corporate employee that does these kinds of things. So, you know, that's, you know, whatever's going on in the background with my family is not as applicable. And I would do it in a gentle way. I wouldn't say, you're an idiot for asking, because that's what we're thinking is like, oh my God. But you also have to think about whether or not you want to work for a company that ends up having, especially a leader asking questions that are illegal. That really gets under my skin.
Right.
Well, I mean, and people are going to do that. I mean, like you're going to sometimes be put in that situation, right? So it's like, be prepared for it. Like, how are you going to handle an inappropriate question? Sorry, Lauren, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, you're fine. That's kind of my whole point about being a duck. Even if it's something that wasn't on you and it was something that's on them, you still have to be calm. You have to maintain tact. You have to still be the person who's on the other side of this interview, potentially still wanting this role, regardless of what's happening. So how do you respond, and how do you control your own emotions in the interview? And then also, like, there's some people who get super nervous. There's some people who have like little tics. Learn what your tics are. Learn how to notice them and notice what you're doing. I think that's really important as well, because sometimes we tell on ourselves with our verbal cues.
I have the worst one, and I'm still working on it. So it's terrible. So when I'm really deep in thought, right, and I look up, right, and some people find it very disconcerting, and so sometimes if I feel really comfortable in an interview and I'm like, listen, I have this thing. So when I'm really concentrating, sometimes I look up. I'm not engaged. I'm just being really thoughtful. So, and they're like, oh, thanks for letting us know. Right. So either, you know, they think I'm just a dork, which is, again, I'm totally fine with that. But I think it's just better to be honest, because then no one is wondering anything. They're not making any assumptions. Right. Other things I wanted to ask you guys are like, what are questions to avoid? And I have a whole list of the questions to avoid that I've gotten over the years. But like, you know, if someone's trying to be impressive, things that are super easily found on the website isn't a good question to ask, right? Because then it's like you just didn't do your homework. Or, you know, if you're on your first interview, and depending on what the role is, right? You know, don't ask about, you know, the salary or benefits really early in the process, right? Like, you can self-select yourself out. Again, I think it's situational. I think sometimes it's the level that you're at. You know, the work from home policies before, like, really, like, in the first few minutes, it's not probably one you wanna do. And then sometimes overly personal questions with the interviewer. I have had some of the most strangest personal questions asked during an interview, and I'm always like, I go, inquiring minds want to know, but probably not the place for it, you know? So like, I try to deflect it with humor, but I'm also like, okay, you know, and Andrew Gibbs just said, and I swear, yeah, Andrew, that's well documented, sir. Yeah, don't swear in the interview. That's bad. What about you guys?
Lauren, you want to go?
Yeah, I've definitely had to tell people not to swear. I'm like, okay, I know you said the F word a lot with me, but when you move on, if we move you forward, you can't do that. I've had to coach people on that. People are just too comfortable, I think. One of the questions that I don't like that people ask is, what does a typical day in this role look like? If you're in the interview process, I think you should kind of understand the role you're applying for. Maybe there are going to be some nuances to the day specifically, but you don't need to be asking that in the interview. You should have some more weighted questions, in my opinion. You can do research, like Jen said, to find out answers to questions like that. So really, I think having the questions to avoid is important, but having some really good questions lined up that other candidates aren't going to ask, which is where you show that you've done your research. You're using like critical thinking skills, asking about maybe potential things in the future or what you could see happening or questions about what's coming. I mean, showing you're engaged, I think, in questions is also super exciting. Showing that you care about the future of the company, where you're going is important. I think that's super, super engaging when I hear candidates asking those questions.
So we've only got 6 minutes left, but one of the things I wanted to just have you guys say something is there's a lot of virtual interviews, right? And I think virtual interviews are also where you can self-select out, right? If you don't have, I think there's something like over 86% of people are doing virtual interviews, right? Especially when they start. So, make sure you're in a quiet place. Don't have your TV going. Make sure your lighting is okay. Don't have the dogs and animals in your room, which, technology beforehand, like I just think sometimes people forget about that. And, sometimes they don't put themselves on mute, or they do put themselves on mute and then they can't figure out how to unmute themselves. Like, it's not a good look. So anything to add to that? I just wanted to throw that out there because there's so many that are being done, and, lighting is important. Don't judge me today on my lighting, by the way, but yes.
It looks fine. The way I would answer that is with a scenario that was super distracting for me, because you already touched on like the high, I think the high points, Jen, is I interviewed somebody one time who their head was perfectly placed in the frame where their second story ceiling fan was going, and it literally looked like one of those Poindexter hats going, and it was
oh my gosh, it's terrible.
But he didn't know, and it was kind of giving me a little bit of eye vertigo, but and he was a really great candidate, and it didn't stop him from moving forward. I didn't allow that to be to make a biased decision, because I don't think he realized it, but it was a little, just pay attention to what's happening around you.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. So does anybody have any other questions? We've got
Are there any questions in the chat?
I think we covered stuff today.
Yeah.
So I think maybe this is like where we just, and you guys all probably know that we're doing this boot camp, Career Accelerator, and there are a couple spots that we added. Excuse me. So if you guys want to do it, you should probably go there now and sign up. And then there is one in November, I think, that has 3 or 4 spots that's left. So if you guys are interested, I think we put it in the link. I think I did.
Yeah. And what I would say is the Career Accelerator is going to offer you a way to develop your unique value proposition, get the interview prep that you need, job search strategies, a mental health component to navigating, the choppy waters that we know it can be to be in career transition. And we work on LinkedIn banners and headlines and LinkedIn profile development. So it's really all hands on deck with 10 to 12 experts, Jen.
Yep.
It's going to be awesome.
It's gonna be awesome. So if you are interested, reach out, and there is homework, so don't wait till the last minute.
Yes.
Free work.
Please don't wait. Yeah. But so I think the only thing I thought that maybe in the last couple of moments we could talk about is, when you're talking to a hiring manager, this is that's a good question. Okay, what are some of your favorite questions from a candidate that impressed you? I would say like understanding the interviewer's background a little bit is impressive. Understanding their journey means they've done a little bit of due diligence. One question I got was, I understand you guys work in teams, and how do you calibrate the teams? It was really sort of like how the infrastructure worked, and asking, one of the questions I think that really impressed me was people when they would ask me, so I'm really interested in this, and this is what I think I can bring to, to the role, but what what is important to you to bring to the role, right? Like, it's because you're asking the invisible question. Like, there's an answer there. You just didn't ask it. And most people will answer you if you tell them that, right? And then maybe that opens up the door for you to give another quantifiable example or story. Those are just some. I don't know. Lauren, you probably got a bazillion. Gina, you probably have a bazillion too. Those are ones just bubbled to the top for me.
Yeah, no, I like what you just said. I think anytime a candidate is coming to an interview and they really not just understand the company and the interviewer, but they understand that they're going to be joining probably a team that either somebody has left or this is a new role. And I always like for the candidate to ask something along the lines of, if you were going to put a few words on the qualities that you think your new team member would need the most, what would fulfill your team that you currently have? What are the traits of a team member that would really uplift the other people on the team? And hearing them talk about the team and maybe the things that the team needs would also, like you said, give you some space to tell some more stories and help yourself get to the next level.
Yes. And you guys, we are at time. So I really appreciate you guys being here and doing this and giving up your time. I hope that for everybody that joined us, it was helpful, because that's, this is why we do it.
Absolutely.
It's why we're here.
I put in the chat a link to a podcast I was on a couple of years ago. It's on Find Your Dream Job, and the title of it is How to Answer Any Behavioral Interview Question.
That's lucky that we have that.
So check it out.
So, well, listen, you guys, I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, you can reach out to us. If you've got questions about the Career Accelerator, reach out. And just thank you guys so much. And if there's anybody that you know that you think might need this information, just forward the live to them. And Lauren, I know you got to run, so thank you. Gina, you got to run too. So,
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we'll see you later.
Have a great day. See ya.
Yeah.